without your face. Well, what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, your brother, and your friend Rashid, and I'd like to thank you all for joining me on another edition of the most powerful for truth on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries. And as we wait for my colleague and friend Carl Zah to join us, I wanted to point out some things. I've been getting a lot of emails and stuff about how they're suppressing the channel. I know it, you know it, we know it, but we got to keep pushing. Regardless, as long as you're here and I'm here and God's here, we're going to be victorious. All right. The truth always wins out, and it's always lies and deception that always looks as if it progresses. All right. So it gains a lot of momentum, and then it stalls, stutters, and then it just shuts down. The truth may take a moment, but as it builds up momentum over time, right? It's like the snowball effect. It gets bigger and bigger, and the momentum and the velocity as it goes downhill, it crushes everything. That's where we are. All right. So if I'm not too much concerned about how they suppress the numbers and play with the show or whatever, everybody else, let's just keep pushing, keep moving. I want to talk to you guys about something. Maybe I'll get this in before Carl joins us. All right. Because we're talking about the meeting between Donald Trump and President Donald, the president, I don't want to do President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin of their two respective countries, the United States of America and the Russian Federation. I want to put some context behind why this meeting was so needed and asked for by the United States, because remember, the United States has been going on a rampage and has been threatening and sanctioning everybody to try to keep the dollar as the dominant currency of the world, because if the dollar dies, so does American imperialism die. So does American exceptionalism die, and export inflation to other nations while she lives in luxury. So it's the life's blood of not only the American economy, not only the Western world, but it's the life's blood of the American military juggernaut. All right. And I wanted to go to something on the screen real quick as we wait for Carl to join us. And if he doesn't join us in the next couple of minutes, by the time I finish this, we'll hit him up and he'll be on. So I was just looking at something on the economic collapse blog, right? And I want to go back down to something. I think it came out August 7th. I'm not going to read the whole article. I'm just going to fill you in on something, because we have to let context. We have the moves that are being made by the U.S., the moves that are made by China, the moves that are being made by Russia and others. We have to look at it in the totality of things. We have to put them in their context, okay? All right? Without, you can't understand the depths of what's really going on, okay? So on August 7th, Michael Snyder wrote an article titled 120 million square feet. Stores closing in the United States are on pace to set a new record high in 2025. And this is what he says. And remember, I'm talking in Alaska, and I'm going to show you how. All righty. Hold on one second, everybody. I hope you guys can hear me and can see me. Hold on one second. Man, here we go with this foolishness with them. I guess they just want to continue to bother us, but we're gonna keep it pushing, okay? Give me a second. Let me get everything. Just bother. Okay. So look, and remember, if we buffer, don't worry about it. We know it's not us now. The cable people out there right on working a backup. If you see something, look at this. The backup thing back here. You see it lighting up on these screens. That's the backup internet thing. So it's not us. Okay. I put this up here purposely to show you that it is not us. Okay. So I want to go to something what it says. Everything is going to be just fine. Why are thousands of stores closing all over the country? So far this year, the total amount of retail space that has been permanently closed has surpassed 160. Oh, that Carl is in the building. I'll bring him in just 1 second. 120 million square feet. We have never seen anything like this before. Let me bring Carl in because I want to add context to all of this. Okay. Um, how's it going today, my friend?
Hi, Rishi. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good today. Hopefully, they won't interfere too much with our show today, Carl. But I want to bring something up to you. I was looking at something, and I was talking to the people before you arrived about putting things in context. And we see the meeting that went on, the hurried meeting that is going on in Alaska between Trump and Vladimir Putin, and we see that a lot of economic people with Vladimir Putin, along with the United States, talking right now, and a meltdown in America. You can see stores closing, jobs shutting down. Um, uh, isn't this a desperate move by the United States to try being the number one economic and military power because China is the number one uh, economic power, Russia, so that the United States can then boomerang to finish off Iran to move towards China? Are you there, Carl? Carl, I think you're frozen. I think Carl is frozen. I'm frozen. Here we go. Are you there, Carl? They are doing this again. I see you. I see you. I see Carl goes out and he comes. I mean, if I'm still live, put a comment or something. Carl is going on. Okay. Carl, Michael, I see everybody. Let me give a shout out to everybody. Hopefully, we're still live. Hopefully. I My internet says we're good to go. Everything. So and I'm seeing more people joining in the chat, but it seems like the screen is frozen, and it seems like and Carl just got knocked out of the booth. So I don't understand what's going on right now. All right. Um. Hopefully, let's try this again. I'm I'm frozen on here. Please, let me know that we're still going. Let me know that we're still going. All right, let's go out. Let's come back in. Hold on one second, everybody. I'm trying to make sure that we're still live because they are tripping right now. Okay, everybody. Again, I want to apologize. As you see, it's not us. It's not us. It's them. You see the backup internet thing is flashing. Everything is going right. That's the backup. So it's not us. So hopefully Carl will get back in here. But again, let me say something to you guys. Let's go back to until Carl comes back into the channel, comes back. That's the article I was reading. If everything is good, so far this year, the total amount of retail space that has been permanently closed has surpassed 120 million square feet. We have never seen anything like this before. Store closings spiked during the early days of the pandemic. But in 2025, stores are being permanently shuttered at an even faster rate or pace. In fact, during the first 6 months of this year, 5,822 store closures were recorded. That's part one. Okay, listen to this part. Let's go up to something else. On August 10th, Michael Snyder writes this. Remember, this goes hand in hand with what we're seeing going on in Alaska. You cannot decouple these things, okay? It says 86% of Americans feel stressed out about the cost of groceries, and many people are starting to really flip out emotionally, okay? Now, we see job stores shutting down. We see unemployment rising. We see the cost of food going up. We see America being outcompeted by China in every area out there. And we see that the sanctions that they levied against Russia backfired. This is what is leading us to this meeting in Alaska. I believe, and Carl is in the booth. I'm going to bring him right on the screen. I believe that this is another sleight of hand by the magician. You know, when a magician does a trick, they lead you away from the trick. They make you look in the opposite direction of where the trick is actually taking place, so it appears as if it was magic. I believe that they see China as the most pressing threat to America. They're losing everywhere on the board against the Chinese. They're losing everywhere against Russia. They can handle Russia. They believe this because Russia is not on an economic level with the Chinese. So they want to come to some type of agreement to dial down the temperature with Russia so that they can reorganize, reorient, and then refocus their attention on Central Asia or West Asia to try to break that Belt and Road Initiative and then focus mainly on China because China's the pressing threat. I'm bringing Carl in and I'll let Carl say what he has to say on this matter. Hopefully they'll let him get to the stage.
Hi, Rishi, I'm back. I had to restart my internet. My internet always act up at least once a day.
Okay, Carl.
So that was my bad.
What do you think about this situation?
Yeah, I mean it's no secret what's going on, right? Because the U.S. has been saying this publicly for a long time. Their strategic thinkers like Mearsheimer has stated time and again, U.S. shouldn't waste any more time in Ukraine, in Europe, or Middle East. China is a top priority because China is the closest near peer competitor U.S. has. We must concentrate all our resources to contain China because U.S. can no longer be the global hegemon that at all place at all time. even Marco Rubio has recognized it is now a multipolar world, right? He said that, and that means pulling back, marshaling resources to top priority regions like Western Pacific. Now, um, one other thing they want to do is to peel away Russia from China. There's talking about reverse Kissinger. Like they thought they can engineer possibly another Russia-China split. But I have to remind people, Kissinger did not engineer the Sino-Soviet split. Sino-Soviet split happened before Kissinger visited China. They already had a border war going on at 1969 that allowed Kissinger to come in to exploit the existing Sino-Soviet split and uh, bring about Nixon's visit to China. Currently, that's not the same dynamic going on between China and Russia, because China and Russia, they also have their relationship, have their own dynamic outside of their respective relationship with United States. No doubt U.S. policy for the last 20 years have pushed the two countries closer and closer together more than ever. But at the same time, Russia is a commodity exporter. China is a commodity importer. Their economies are complementary, and they have they have one of the longest land borders. And for Russia, the priority is always Ukraine, Europe. And for China, the priority is the Pacific, Taiwan, South China Sea. So both sides have a vested interest to have a peaceful border, because like they also don't want to waste resources to confront each other like in the Cold War, when they have other bigger fish to fry here. For Russia, the biggest fish is of course Ukraine. They want to, but one of the things the West want, United States want, is to frozen the conflict in Ukraine and to put all the burden of supporting the Ukrainian state on the Europeans. That's why the Defense Secretary Pete Sedgwick have been traveling to Europe and telling everyone, you guys got to pay up. You guys need to pay to do all the heavy lifting on the Ukrainian front, because this is your continent. We just provide the guidance and you do what we say, and you pay for it. And this is why they're telling them to raise their defense budget to 5% of the GDP. I mean, you don't need 5% of the GDP devoted to defense budget unless you are fighting a war, right? And even United States currently does not spend 5% of its GDP on defense. It spends about 4%. And well, at least the official Pentagon budget, because all the money going to Ukraine, that's not part of the official budget. But so U.S. want to hand over Ukraine front to the Europeans, while extract itself to go focus on China in the Western Pacific. What Russia want, though, is not merely a frozen conflict. They don't want like a repeat of Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, where U.S. and the Europeans came in and say, "Oh, let's freeze the conflict," but at the same time, they use the time to resupply Ukraine military, rearm Ukraine military, so to prepare for a bigger and larger conflict down the road. So that's the last thing Russia wants. The whole reason Russia launched this special military operation is they want to solve this issue once for all. They want a guarantee that Ukraine will not join NATO. There will be no NATO troops on Ukrainian soil. Now that's we're gonna have to see if the West can abide by that part of the bargain, because that is key for Russia. That's not that part is not negotiable for the West. They just want to freeze the conflict. We're gonna have to see, because we've seen the U.S. and NATO broke their they literally use Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 as a tool to simply freeze the conflict, so they can restart the conflict some time down the road. This is so there's going to be some kind of trust issue that needs to be established between U.S. and Russia. Of course, Russia also has an interest to wrap down the conflict because it is drawing a lot of resources away from their economy, and they would also like to have improved ties so they can get the sanctions lifted. So we are still at a very early stage of a possible U.S. Russia détente, and it all depends what happens next. There's no like groundbreaking, shaking deal that happened in Alaska because a lot of these the summit is really just photo op. It's for the two leaders to be shown together, to take pictures together, to show that they had agreement. But a lot of the actual negotiation was done beforehand by teams on both sides. So I think by now they all understand what the terms are. It remains to be seen whether the U.S., particularly NATO, can abide by their end of the agreement. One of the thing they could easily switch off the conflict is stop supplying weapons to Ukraine. That is that the that's when you can tell whether they're being sincere about ending the conflict. Whether they will, because once they stop supplying weapons and funds, there's no way Ukraine can continue the confrontation. This is not a conflict between Ukraine and Russia. This is a conflict between NATO and Russia. So let's see if that's going to happen. But one of the objectives, the reverse Kissingering, I don't think that's happening because there's no reason for Russia to kind of turn on China and when they can just continue to have a normal trade relationship like they always do. And whatever happened between China and United States, that's Russia has no vested interest to join in that fight. So this is why I don't think that the reverse Kissingering is happening, but it remains to be seen whether U.S. and NATO can abide their end of the deal on ending the conflict on Ukraine.
Carl, I think that if Russia were to accept any deal, they would have to be foolish. As they often stated that America is agreement incapable, and as I often say, the only time America wants to negotiate is when she's at the disadvantage, and she needs to rest, rearm, and recalibrate. And so we see that she's losing. She lost the war against Iran. We see that she's double back, and look at this. She's saying that she wants detente in Ukraine, and yet is trying to go through Armenia, a backdoor to weaken China, Russia, and Iran again in the Caspian area. So Russia would be a fool to accept that any agreement if it does not include America pulling out of Azerbaijan and pulling out of all of the former Soviet states, because America's just if she has the time, she's going to double back because her goal is to weaken and destroy Iran, make all like sub-states subservient to Israel, to weaken and balkanize Russia, and to subjugate and suppress and evict China, because China is the preeminent threat to American power. So for Russia to accept anything less than a complete cessation of weapon sales, for all of the U.S. and NATO to pull back to the borders that Russia had been asking for over a decade. And I believe that this would be foolish on Russia's part. And I believe that this would cause trouble at home with Vladimir Putin because of all of the blood and treasure that has been lost in the war in Ukraine.
Well, I think from Russia's side, they're probably, they have been dealing with U.S. for decades now. They probably understand, have a realistic expectations. But what they're probably doing is preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. And I mean, obviously, any ease of tension is good. If there's a succession of conflict, that would be good. Um, they just have to make sure the U.S. stick to end of their bargain, because right now Russia actually has the initiative on the battlefield. They are winning on the battlefield, and U.S. can, you cannot really win on negotiation table what you have lost on the battlefield. This is why U.S. have been making signals that they're going to acknowledge Russia's control of the former Ukrainian territory. This is, you have the NATO secretary, Rutz, coming say, oh, we may have to accept the deal, land for peace, to swap some of this um, Ukrainian claim on the land that now Russia controls for a ceasefire. In this European, they basically are just mouthpiece for Washington at this point, especially like NATO, EU. These are all leaders that have been installed by Washington to be their spokespeople in Europe, and this is a signal that Washington, they're ready to trading concessions, which comes at no cost to themselves, to give up the land in the East Ukraine, and to recognize Russia's control over those land. And I think for Russia's part, the conflict has been ongoing for 3 years now, and they do have an interest to kind of at least wrap it up at some point. So they don't want to be seen as an obstacle to peace, right? And so they're going through the process to demonstrate they're serious about ending the conflict. Again, it's we have to wait and see whether this resolution will hold, because as Confucius says, listen to one's words but watch their action. And especially when you're dealing with the US, you got to watch them very, very carefully. One of the first thing is you got to watch if the weapon flows stops to Ukraine. And if the weapon and the money if the money on weapon dries up, Ukraine won't be able to do anything. And this is why Zelensky is like huffing and puffing right now, because he's the one that's been left out to dry. They have always been pawns in this great game. The Ukrainians were being like tossed aside like used condom, and because this is really they have been egged on to to poke the bear, and now it's them who are taking the consequences. For Europeans and Americans, they can just walk away at any moment. It will be the Ukrainians being left holding the bag. We'll have to see if there's concrete follow-up to the meeting, because Putin did extend an invitation for a second round of meeting in Moscow. So nothing has been finalized yet. Everything is still up in the air. Now we're just seeing a soft rapprochement between Russia and United States. It's too early to tell. It's too early to tell. Like, this is like the Zhou Enlai, how Zhou Enlai responded to Henry Kissinger when Kissinger asked about effects of French Revolution. It's too early to tell. It's too early to tell.
Hey, Carl, I was looking in the chat. They said, could you come in? Could you go out and come back in a second? Because it was choppy a little bit for them.
Okay,
and I
sure.
know that it is not us. I know it's not us. I know it has to be StreamYard. It cannot be. Okay. And when you come back, you may see a video up, but we'll still be streaming. I'm getting ready to play a video for them to see, so that as you come back in, you can listen also.
Gotcha. I'll be right back.
All right. Listen, everybody. Okay. All right. Everybody, listen. I want to play this clip for you guys. to show you what's going on. I just mentioned something to you guys about what's going on. Iran has already threatened to go to war with the United States, Turkey, and Azerbaijan and Armenia if the United States posts um, so-called troops area that stops the travel of Iranian trucks that goes through. I forget the corridor's name, but it's in Armenia. And Iran has threatened that they said that they would go to war. That this is of a national security interest to them. I'm going to clip for attention to this, and on the back end, you'll get Carl's take on this and my talk on this. Okay, so everybody pay close attention to this. All right.
Let's discuss the issue now with Arnaud Devalet, a political consultant and defender of human rights. Many thanks for joining us on the programme this evening. First of all, I'd like to ask for your reaction to these reports that Armenia has brokered this deal with the US.
Yes, thank you for having me. Well, this is actually a long-standing story that goes back to, as you mentioned, about 3 decades and the fall of the Soviet Union. A lot of has happened since then, and the military budget of Azerbaijan, propped up by the rise in oil prices, has allowed Baku to essentially retain what it had lost in the war over Nagorno-Karabakh between 1991 and 1994. But it hasn't stopped there. It also decided to capture some of the, reintegrate, actually, I should say, into its own territory, because let's recall that Nagorno-Karabakh was actually handed over to Azerbaijan, the former Soviet Republic of Azerbaijan, in 1921 by then Soviet Premier, or he would become Soviet Premier. He was then Nationality Commissioner, Joseph Stalin. So technically, Nagorno-Karabakh is Azerbaijani under the law of successor states. And it's just the issue of military parity which prevented Azerbaijan from retaining, as it should have, as early as 1991, this enclave. Obviously, for reasons going back to 4th century BC, Yerevan considers the former enclave, the former Artsakh Republic, as part of the greater Armenian kingdom. But legally speaking, it belongs to Azerbaijan. Now, this takes us to the most recent events, because obviously the war of 2020 was politically difficult for current Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan to live up to. And he decided that on the platform that he had used to be elected in 2018, which he calls a revolution of some kind, to basically essentially throw away the natural alliances that bound Armenia to Russia in favor of a more Western-centric. And this accord actually is the expression of this pivot. Let's keep it in mind. Go ahead.
So sorry. It's a long and complex history between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I'm just intrigued by how the US has become involved. I'm wondering, by coming to this agreement with Armenia, what is the US administration trying to achieve, like strategically in the region, and what could the possible downsides be for Yerevan with this deal?
Well, as always in those questions, you have to look at the maps and the geography. And to the south of those two South Caucasus countries, you have Iran, which just got off a 12-day war with Israel. Israel has a very strong presence in Azerbaijan, illustrated by no less than 3 bases plus a listening outpost in the areas that were definitely reincorporated in late 2023, early 2024 by Baku. And so in anticipation of the next round, and there will be a next round between Israel and Iran, this is key to keep an eye on Tehran. The idea is also, as far as the One Belt, One Road initiative is concerned, to essentially isolate and evict Russia from any South Caucasus matters. And in so doing, the technicality was Article 9 of the 2020, November 2020 accord that was negotiated also with Moscow, which called for the unimpeded access of all trade routes. In this case, it could have been envisioned that a railway operated by the Russian railway company through a license given to Armenia might have been the means used to do so. Instead of that, what we have is this Zangizur initiative, which is essentially a kind of an artificial, very controversial, inflammatory way of giving a name to the U.S. into the region, provided that Turkey will then access through Azerbaijan the oil that lies there. It will help Europe to decrease by 10 to 15% its reliance on Russian oil as well.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, it will, let's be honest, open a second front if and when NATO decides it's against Russia.
Well, we'll be keeping a very close eye on these reports. Thank you for speaking to us this evening. We appreciate your time, Arnaud Devalet, political consultant and defender of human rights. Thank you.
Thank you.
To screen, hold on one sec. I think Carl and I got knocked off. Add to screen. Righty then. So, Carl, I want to ask you something. I want to ask you something because we're going to cut the stream short. The cable people just came in and they told me that they're getting ready to shut down the thing because they have to put new wiring through or whatever. But anyway, I want to ask you something. Why is America in every area that China, Iran, and Russia deem strategic, and America wants the whole world to believe that, oh, there's nothing military about it, there's nothing economic about it, there's nothing nefarious about it, but at every turn, we look at Baluchistan and what they're doing in there to try to stop China and Pakistan. We look at the terror that they're spreading across the former Central Soviet republics. We look at what they're doing in the Philippines, what they're doing in Syria, what they're doing trying to push Japan against China. We look at how she's telling Asian nations that they're either with us or against China. We look at what they're doing in Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, Latin America, Africa. Why and I want to say this like this, why is China and Russia reactive instead of active on these measures? Because the empire is playing for keeps.
Well, because China and Russia, their goal is not to be a global hegemon, right? I mean, one of the talking points in U.S. is always, oh, China is trying to supplant us as a global hegemon. No. China is not interested to become the next United States, a global cop, to have carry out interventions everywhere. China is just concentrated on itself, its own development, and this is why it's unrealistic to expect China to act like the doppelganger of the United States, trying to counter U.S. In every global stage. What? By the way, what was happening in Armenia and Azerbaijan? That has been long planned out. That was the same strategy U.S. has pursued since the end of Cold War to access the Caspian oil and gas. They had long planned out that pipeline from Azerbaijan to Turkey. And by the way, and Israel is also heavily dependent on Azerbaijani oil. The oil goes from Azerbaijan to Turkey, and then from Turkey's Ceyhan port goes travel down to Israel. So all of them, Israel and United States, they're in it together. This was a long-term project that has been in place since the Clinton era, since the 1990s, the collapse of the Soviet Union. And it's just now they're able to do it because somehow they're able to flip Armenia, right? Armenia traditionally has a more friendly relationship with Russia, but recently the Armenian leadership, for whatever reasons, try to appeal to the West, try to join the Western camp, but it hasn't been good for Armenia. That meant they lost a war against Azerbaijan, which was supplied by both United States and Israel, especially in the drone warfare. The Israeli-made drones made a big difference in the Azerbaijan-Armenian war, and now, like the leadership of Armenia is essentially selling out the core interests of Armenia to appease the United States. Maybe just so those people in power can get a slice of the pie, but it's designed to specifically cut out Russia and to cut out Iran from this deal, and this U.S. will always play this game, even though they say they want to extricate themselves from entanglement in Middle East, in Europe, in order to concentrate on China. But I think that the problem is when you have an empire, you have an institution of empire, and those institutions have a lot of inertia. This is why it's so hard for U.S. to pivot away from Europe and West Asia to confront China in Western Pacific, because all these NATO bureaucrats, all these think tankers who have been their whole life's existence is to hype the threat of Russia, is to advocate for tensions against Russia, or to advocate for supporting of Israel to create instability in Middle East. They cannot pivot away because their life and career depend on it. And this is why I think U.S. will going to have a very hard time to pivot to Asia. They have been saying pivot to Asia since Obama's first term, when Hillary Clinton was the treasurer, when the Secretary of State. Pivot to Asia was coined by Hillary, and it's been how many years? It's more than a decade later. That pivot to Asia hasn't happened. It's because of U.S. Commitment to this Imperial project elsewhere, and because U.S. is an empire, you will not be able to extricate itself successfully. I don't think. I just don't see any kind of actual pivot to Asia happening. By the way, pivot to Asia is all just military pivot. It's just all we're talking about: military hardware, military bases. Now they did gain some access to Filipino bases, but if you look at the actual military deployment, U.S. is actually pulling back in the Western Pacific. They're redeploying a lot of resources into Guam right now, the so-called second island chain, because they realize, everything in the first island chain falls under the missile barrage range of China-based missiles, and China is now also pushing out. So to answer your question about China, why China has been more proactive, China is actually proactive in its neighborhood. This is where China try to focus on the area where it has superiority and strength. You would not try to project power into West Asia because, let's face it, China still lack power projection capability the way that U.S. possess. China only have one overseas military base that's in Djibouti, and there's really, Sun Tzu's Art of War tells you don't go compete with your enemy in an area where they have the strength. right? You concentrate on an area where you have local superiority, and that's what China is doing. It's building. It's right now. It's on massive building effort for its navy. Its military is getting an upgrade. Its air force is going to get the sixth generation aircraft probably around 2030, and they're also massively updating their missile force. So all this area all this effort bolstered China's strength around the area around China, which is really what China cares about. Is China cares about its own defense, not spreading democracy around the world. So the way that the U.S. justification for its imperial project. So China right now is pushing beyond the first island chain. Now it's recently it sent two aircraft carrier group all the way to waters around Guam. So China is already pushing against U.S. in the Western Pacific, in its own neighborhood. That's China's long-term goal, is to push U.S. forces outside of East Asia. And to that extent, China has been successful. This is why U.S. right now, all these U.S. still do its so-called freedom of navigation in South China Sea, etc. But that's a symbolic gesture now. It's a because the U.S. itself knows all its surface fleet in times of war will be liable to wipe out in the first 30 minutes by missiles from China, because now China have their own satellite constellations constantly capable of monitoring U.S. Navy's movement throughout South China Sea and Western Pacific, and those satellite can coordinate with the anti-ship ballistic missiles based in China. And once those missiles fire, they can correct course to account for changes in coordinates of these U.S. ships. So U.S. knows this, and the only reason they're still doing the freedom of navigation is an act of bravado and just a show of flag. It's a symbolic gesture. Okay, my son is here calling for me. Papa working a few minutes. I muted my mic because my son is talking to me in the background.
Every for us. All right, Carl. Now I want you to thoughts on what just took place that most people aren't aware of. That China sent the J-20 near U.S. bases in Japan, and they were not picked up. The J-20s were not picked up by the U.S. advanced radars, and someone told me that it really spooked the Japanese and the U.S. command in Asia.
Well, yeah, that's going to happen more and more because China has been upgrading its own stealth technology, and it's going to get worse for the U.S. when China's sixth generation aircraft going to be deployed in the 2030s. Right now, United States' own sixth generation fighter project is still basically on PowerPoint presentation phase. My son wants to know what I'm doing, and and so this is why the U.S. know that they have a very small, limited time window to contain China. Well, I would argue that window already passed. I think that window already closed. Right now, China has already achieved the escaping velocity. I don't think China can be contained at this point. Short of a thermonuclear exchange, I don't think China can be contained. And China is very careful not to get itself baited into a conflict with United States right now, because China knows time's on its side. It's continuing to build its military strength. It's continually adding to its nuclear arsenal. According to Pentagon estimate, China will probably expand its nuclear force to about somewhere around 1,000 to 1,500 nuclear warheads by mid 2030s. So this is all, so China is not going to do it. China is not the one that's rushing into a conflict in 2027 like the U.S. Pentagon keep on stressing, because China will have far more capability vis-a-vis United States in the 2030s. And that gap is only continue to grow because I don't think I don't think they will be able to bring the manufacturer back to the U.S. Right, and the fact that the U.S. military industrial complex even giving up on manufacturing U.S. so they're like bending the U.S. legislations to get U.S. warship to retrofit it in Korean and Japanese shipyards, because they don't have the capability. This is why the longer China can wait out United States, we can. China is literally doing that mean do nothing and win. They're actually not doing nothing. They're building their own strength, and over time, that will be more apparent. Sorry, I may have to go early, Rashid, because my son is pestering me right now.
Everything is real, Carl. You know how we are. You know how we are. So go ahead, handle your business. Let's do this again next week. Everything should be good to go, Carl. You and I know. Hey, give your family my love, man. Be safe, be blessed, my friend. Carl is a true friend of mine. So Carl, be blessed.
Thank you.
Yes, man.
Thank
Go
you
ahead and
very
handle
much,
your
Rashid. Thank you for inviting
business.
me. Bye bye.
So listen. Again, everybody, a lot is going on here. A lot economically. Again, we go back to what I was saying, and we'll end the show shortly. But I want you to understand something. There is no mistake that they're attacking the show the way they are with the streaming now. Again, I'm saying this because it has direct correlations to the geopolitical things that we were just talking about. Now, how many shows do you know I've upgraded the internet thing to the highest that you can get. They even sent an extra modem so that it does not buffer. I can show you the stuff. And to be smart on that, I get the backup for the desktop computers over here, right? And I have the hotspot for the computer down here, and yet it's buffering. And my son has adjusted everything according to what the technicians say. So that's not us. It's not us. So that's letting you know that these people don't want us to talk about the stuff that we're talking about because it pertains to the security of your life. And as long as they can keep you ignorant, or as long as they can keep you mesmerized by foolishness, by sport, by play, by materialism, then they have the upper hand. They don't want you to be enlightened about the geopolitical moves or anything that the U.S. is making, or that China is making, or that Iran is making, or South Africa is making. Sometimes I hear when they're talking about BRICS, they often leave out South Africa, and they do that to their own mistake, because even though South Africa is not a nuclear power, South Africa was a nuclear state. They willingly gave up their nuclear weapons. They still have the capacity to constitute several hundred nuclear weapons if they so chose to. South Africa is also an exporter of weapons. This does not get put in the conversation. All right. So what I'm saying to you is this: the powers that be will do any and everything they can to take us off message, to aggravate you with a little buffering or a little delay or whatever like that. That stuff is minute. It is a sidebar. We have to focus on the message at hand. And the message at hand is empowering people through knowledge, wisdom, and understanding so that you can put yourself and your people in a better position to withstand the storm that is now beating against the American empire and the Western world. That is major. This is what we're talking about. Let's see. Listen to what Mehdi said. I didn't even see this, Mehdi. I'm sorry. Let me put this up here. Mehdi says, you are definitely throttled on YouTube end. I never see you in my feed anymore. I've been getting all kinds of messages like that. You know, they will do, and I often say this when I hear that stuff. I said, listen, the devil plans a plan, and God plans a plan, and surely God is the best of the planners. They may think that they're doing this, but what they're in the end, they cannot hold out against the truth. They cannot, no matter what they do. If they decide to push me off the air, it doesn't matter. Other people will come on because the truth will stand regardless of whether Rashid is here with the Red Pill Diaries or if someone else comes into place. The truth will not be defeated. It has a impeccable record. We talk about Floyd Mayweather's 50-0. We talk about these other Khabib 32-0. Well, the truth is trillions in O. It will never lose, falter, or fail against falsehood. It may take a little time, but it will. So let me get to something. Let's go back to something, and then we'll end the stream. So again, on Michael Snyder's thing, he talks about the 86% of Americans that are feeling stressed about the cost of groceries, right? And many people are starting to really flip out emotionally. Now, I want you to think about this because this is very important. 86%. That leaves 14% that are not stressed out, okay? Now, what if America goes to war with Israel again against Iran, which that is going to happen? And what if the Strait of Hormuz, the Arabian Gulf, and all of these other waterways are mined and warships start sinking and everything, and the price of oil and gas go through the roof? That means now that the people who were starting to stress out are now freaked out, panicked, and now in revolutionary mode because they can't get the things, the staple foods, the staple things for them, their children, their household. They can't pay their bills. They can't keep medicine for the people who need medicine. This means that America is putting a gun to her own head, loading every chamber and playing Russian roulette. Now, you tell me how successful you would be to get a 45, load every chamber, put it to your head, and pull the trigger, thinking that you're going to win in the battle against the Russian roulette. This is what she's doing. To then pivot and do this and try to wage war against the BRICS, which comprise 44% of the global economy or something. Over half of the population of the planet Earth. More than half of the resources on the planet Earth. And then you pivot towards China to try to stop China, which supplies you with your rare earths, 93 to 95% of all goods on your stores, the important components in your missiles, warships, warplanes, radars, your fatigues that your military men have on, your combat boots, the flags that they have back there. How will this work out? This is what I'm telling you. This shows you these people are megalomaniacs. And they don't think things through. All they can see right now is the pressing problem that stands before them. We are losing our hegemonic power. We are losing, and we cannot stand this. So we're going to throw everything up against the wall and see if anything sticks. But I want to talk to Hexif. I want to talk to Rubio. I want to talk to the what is her name? Tulsi Gabbard. I want to talk to Vice President Vance, and I want to talk to Donald Trump, the President of the United States, right now. Putting human excrement on ice cream cones and sprinkling it with little sprinkles and flakes does not it make an ice cream. It is still not fit for human consumption. Your policies are destroying your empire. Your policies are alienating not just the world, which you're going to have to deal with soon, but your policies are now causing a divide between the people you govern and those who govern those people. Satan divided against Satan can't stand, right? The United States is now divided, and look at the growth and the aggravation of the people. People now are so aggravated because the economics and the political situation has now deteriorated to such a place now that if you bump up against a person now, they'll kill you. This shows you that people are losing their grasp on reality. No ethics, no morals. Nothing is guiding them. And then you look to the leadership, and it is a reflection of what's going on in the streets of America. If you see violence, right? Violence begets violence. So when people seem like they're surprised that this person went up into this church and killed all these people because they had a disagreement with a pastor, or these people went into the store and had an argument and there was a shootout, all one has to do then is turn to the government and see how the U.S. government, the people, conduct its foreign policy. When it has a disagreement, what does it do? Huh? It threatens, it sanctions, it goes in and causes discontent amongst the nations that it has the problem with. It tries to assassinate, overthrow, or delegitimize the government. And when all that does not work, what does it resort to? Violence. Violence begets violence. So what you're seeing in America is a reflection of the policies of the American government that is in her foreign policy. And M. Sparks says, don't piss off the supplier unless you're stupid, arrogant Neanderthal that thinks he is still in first place. Absolutely. What sense does it make? And I brought this up. And I'm just going to throw a bank out. Let me make up a bank. The First National Bank through the First National Bank of Florida. I have 3 card notes through the first the bank of the first bank of Florida, National Bank of Florida. I work for the First National Bank of Florida, so my income is coming in, right? Right. I get discounts on my power bills and my medicine through working there. And I get pissed with the First Bank, National Bank of Florida, and I started boycotting and throwing Molotov cocktails through the window. How do you think that's going to work out for me and my family's livelihood? Huh? Do you sit down and wonder these things? Because common sense is not so common. They are now openly stating that China is the most pressing threat while begging China to buy debt. South Africa, we are going to sanction South Africa and these African nations. When a lot of you don't know this, but African nations are a large buyer of U.S. debt. They're talking about sanctioning Russia, which had a nice amount of U.S. debt. They're telling Japan, their so-called ally, that you must go along with us regardless of how bad it hurts your economy, regardless of how bad your people are against it, so that we can provoke China. And Japan is the largest holder of U.S. debt outside of the Fed. Do you see the lunacy here? And no one is calling these people out. We're looking at a superpower gone mad that is super no more. And they can't deal with not being Superman anymore and dealing with the reality that they're just a common man anymore. This is beneath them because they looked at everybody else as being beneath them. And that when they look at things through their view. Oh, we can't let China rise, or we can't let BRICS rise, because then they may do to us. See, that's that conscience, that sociopathic conscience that I rape, I pillage, I wage war, I overthrow, I occupy, I steal, I demand others to do what I myself won't do. So we can't allow anybody else to get in that position because they may do the exact same thing, wicked, twisted, That is the mind state of the lunatic. That is a berserker mind. That is a berserker mind. These people are berserkers. Look it up. Look what a berserker. Look up what a berserker is. These people, and then they want to pee over the balcony and tell you it's raining. It's raining. And you're supposed to believe that. And if you don't believe it, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're against this and you're against that. No, what I'm against is lies. I'm against falsehoods. I'm against devilish actions, because devilish actions, lies, and falsehood breeds devilish actions, lies, and falsehood, breeds violence, breeds greed, breeds rape, breeds all of the things that you claim to stand against. You are an incubator. America and the West are incubators of all of this stuff. Right now, let me tell you something. And please shout out to Penguin, shout out to Fobo, shout out to M Sparks, shout out to everybody that I missed. But I got to go on, I hadn't talked to you guys really. So I got to go on this little tangent for a minute, okay? Shout out to Flying Crocodile in the and Flying Crocodile says, bugger, all countries are buying U.S. debt. Most of it is being bought quietly by the Federal Reserve, financed by stealth QE apps. God dog it, Flying Crocodile. Let me highlight this. Okay? If they will allow it. That's going to be right there. So listen. Let us look at the situation. See, because there are no adults in the building when you're talking about London, Paris, Berlin, Brussels, Washington, D.C. There are no adults in they will not accept blame for any arrogant imperialistic policy that they made. I remember looking at this was before Muammar Gaddafi was brutally raped. Let me say this again. This was before Muammar Gaddafi, beaten, tortured, then executed. He was at a meeting and he was stating to them, I am the one that is stopping the influx of migrants. If you move me in my government, you're going to have problems like none other. Let me deal with my people. Stop fearing it. Let me deal with my people. Because if you remove me, all hell is break. And I'm paraphrasing. Right? Wait. Talk to me. They vilified him, demonized him, delegitimized him, ventured in it, and said a responsibility to protect. And then they didn't just kill him, they went after his children too, and his grandkids, right? And now Europe is dealing with an influx of migrants. And I hear the good Colonel McGregor, who has a lot of excellent points, but some points he forget on a few things. And I think he does an excellent job from what he tells us, right? And he talks about how the people come there and they want to assimilate. But isn't that what Europe did? Isn't that what NATO did? They didn't assimilate to Libya. They bombed them. They wouldn't assimilate to the policies by the Libyan government. They bombed them. They won't assimilate to the policies of Niger, Chad, Mali, Ivory Coast. Remember, France overthrew the legitimate leader of the Ivory Coast. This is what they do. They don't assimilate. They demand, they decree, and then they tell you, if you don't do this, we're going to kill you, overthrow you, delegitimize you. And so when they do that, there's always a reaction to your action. What does science teach us? And it does not go out the window because it's a European country. It does not go out of the window because it's America. Science teaches us that for every action, there's an equal or greater reaction. So if you don't want to let go of your colonies, so you purposely keep them weak and corrupt, right? Even at the detriment of the people, so that you can extract the minerals so that you can live wealthy. How long can you think that go on? That can go on. And when it blows up in your face and it affects the people who had nothing to do with it, then it's everybody else's fault but yours. But your policy was the initiative that brought it to be. It was the incubator. If you let the governments, and we see this, and I have to say this, we see this with America. We see this with Vanderland. What's her name? Vanderland. You must be a democracy. Why? Democracy means the rule of the demons. Why? Why? Since democracy is not so old, how can you force that on other cultures that supersede yours? I'm asking. If you want to live in a democracy, okay, must you force your beliefs? Must you force your type of government? It's not a one-size-fits-all, because you have different cultures, different customs. Then when the people don't conform to this, you demonize them and you go and destroy them. And when they start fleeing on boats to Europe or to the United States, you like what's coming up through Latin America up through the U.S. border, the United States is pissed. But you never talked about how you overthrew the legitimate governments of Colombia or Libya or Bolivia or Brazil or Chile or you never talk about what happened. You only talk about the back end of it because it's now affecting you. You don't talk about what started it. What promoted it? Look at what's going on. Remember that in Syria, Assad is a terrorist. Assad must go. Remember, prior to that, what was America saying? What was America saying? We must fight Al Qaeda. We must fight ISIS, even though these groups just popped up because the United States, they're agents of the United States, right? And Trump says that he never started a war. Then why was he shaking hands with the head chopper and calling him a good and honorable man? Jelani, who is the illegitimate president of Syria, helped into power not just by Turkey, not just by Israel, not just by Jordan, but by the United States, Great Britain, and all of NATO. And now there's massive slaughters of Muslims and Christians all across Syria that did not happen under Assad. Huh? Where are the people crying out for this? Where are the people lashing out saying, hey, this dude is a head chopper for the CIA. They're targeting women and children, raping them and slaughtering them out there. They don't care if you're a Christian or Muslim or whatever. They yell Allahu Akbar, but people don't realize that Arabic, that means God. So you have Christians in the Coptic church, they say Allah too. You have Christians in other churches, they say Allah too. Why? Because Allah is the word for God. But they know that you're ignorant to that, and they use your ignorance to further their policies to destabilize, overthrow, undermine, and then subject people to the whims of the West. So what we're seeing in Alaska is an empire in crisis. An empire in crisis. Crisis mode. She's in trouble. She knows it. You know it. And I know it. Right? And what she's trying to do is get a little breathing room. And even while she's in this, listen to me good, man, because I guess I'm built different. Rest in peace to my mother who passed away a couple of months ago. Rest in peace to my sister who passed away a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Rest in peace to Brother Calvin. Rest in peace to my friends, all of them who passed away. And my cousin who passed away also, cousin Carson. So I've been doing a lot of losses in the last few weeks to months. Okay, but the losses have not blurred my mind on about what is really going on. It has not impeded my thinking or my vision of what's right and what's wrong. You've got to hold these people accountable for what they're doing. This is an empire that is desperate. And even in the moment of her desperation, she refused. Remember now, look at what I'm saying to you, and tell me if I'm lying to y'all. Tell me if I'm lying. Her debt officially just reached over 37 trillion, right? Officially. We know it's up into the hundreds of trillions, but officially 37 trillion. Has that stopped her from funding these covert operations across the world? Even while the people back here need health care, while they're cutting benefits for people who served in their wars. They talk about patriotism and they're cutting the benefits for the people who served in their wars because they see them as no longer useful. They can always find money for R&D projects. They can find money for Zelensky and these color revolutions and these projects to change the leadership of these governments. But when it comes to you, they can't find anything. You're a beggar. You paid into the system, but you're a beggar. And then they talk down to the very people that buys their debt. How is that going to work out? Put yourself in that position and tell me how you think it'll work out for you. Huh? These people are lunatics. I'll go on a tangent on this. Listen, we have a video dropping for the patrons and the channel members this weekend. Also, I want to say to you all before I go, because I'm telling you, this touches home. This touches home. A lot of this stuff that I'm talking about touches home with me. Because let me hush, because I'll get on a tangent on this stuff about how this government is doing people and just casting them away when they get back from war. You're no longer worthy of this and worthy of that. Oh, join the military. You go in the military, you get maimed, injured, or whatever, you get out, they cut your benefits. But the United States got money to fund the entirety of the government of Ukraine. Make that make sense. Huh? Make it make sense. On that note, let me say this to you before we get off there. We got articles and videos dropping between Saturday and Monday for patrons and channel members also. So be on the lookout for that. Sunday morning about 8 a.m. Central Time or 9 a.m. Central Time. You got to join us on the platform. We'll have Brian Berletic on the platform again. Boom! Coming with this heat. Coming back with heat. Monday morning at 11 a.m. we'll have my guy Demetrius Lascaris on the show. Sometime next week we're going to have former U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, back on the show. And then after that, we're going to have Gregory Mannarino coming back on the show sometime soon in the coming days, a week or so like that. And we got a couple more guests for you. I'm working hard behind the scenes. I'm trying to get this stuff. And let me say this. All of this stuff that I have right here, new for you guys. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can find one of the boxes to show you. Oh, man, where's the big box at? Okay. Okay, it's over that way. And I can't get it because I'm not in my office. But anyway, this computer I'm on, brand new computer. Brand new. I got this so that things could run better. Got new modems for you guys. And look what they're doing to us to try to stop the show, to impede the show. So it's not on my end, everybody. Listen to me. I've spent a lot of money upgrading all these things. All right. But I want to let you know this from the depth of my heart to the bottom of my soul. You got to put God in your life. You got to put him first. You got to. Because what's getting ready to come down on this world, what's coming down on this order, this wicked order, these wicked, and it's not just, see, people don't realize this. The thought travels, right? Thought travels. Right? Thought travels over 24. Think about this very good. If thoughts are waveling of his thinking or her thinking, right? If that is the case, and science have borne witness that that is the case, why do you think that America and the West is degenerating to such a state that it is now? Because the leaders' thoughts of perversion, wickedness, greed, murder, lust for power, domination, and a disregard for life, limb, and security of people, is their thoughts are now permeating and seeping down into the minds of the masses of the people, which is causing revolution, war, division, and ultimately a civil war. That's what's going on. When I talk to you guys, I talk to you science, I talk to you math, I talk to you history, I talk to you geopolitics. Because I want you to understand that this is on every level. They're coming at you at every level because they want to rule everybody, and they are prepared to kill everybody if they cannot rule. That is the mind of a berserker. That is the mind of a lunatic. That is the mind of a sociopath and a psychopath and a killer. And what we're dealing with in Washington, D.C., Brussels, London, Berlin, and all of those capitals are lunatic, berserkers, psychopathic killers. On that note, I want to say to you all, thank you all for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth done on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, your brother, and your friend Rashid. And as I always say, do right by others, not because there's some material gain in it or some accolades behind it. Do right by others because it's the right, humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching you, God Almighty is watching you. And as my mother always taught me, God sits high, but he looks low. And know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth. I love you if you love truth. If you don't love the truth, I hate your guts. But if you love truth, I love you. But know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true. But above all things, remember this, to stay righteous. Hey, mama, look at me. Your baby boy still loves you more than life, and I'm going to represent you forever. I love you, mama. I love everybody. I'm out of here. Peace.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a